The sun was shining brightly and the people were just as dazzling. In fact, every single one of them was stunningly beautiful. Forgetting her earlier worries, she started swooning and asked the vampire who came to greet her, "Are you my husband?" He looked completely baffled. "I am not your husband. He is waiting for you inside." Isabel was visibly disappointed. Alan put a comforting arm around her shoulder. "Everyone in this country is beautiful, and the higher their rank, the more gorgeous they are. The Duke is sure to be the most stunning man in the entire empire." Isabel was easy to please. "I don't need to marry the most handsome one. As long as he's as good-looking as that guy, I'll be happy." But then, she was told to enter the castle through the smallest door. It was a clear sign that humans held the lowest status here. Even a dog could look down on her. She began to suspect her parents had sold her out. "So much for being a duchess," she muttered. In the reception hall, her fiancé was a no-show. A maid informed her that the dukes were tired and didn't want to see her. The words hit her like a lightning bolt. "What? Why did you say they? Is it more than one person?" The maid looked just as confused. "You didn't know? The Holy Blood Empire has 4 dukes, who control the military, finances, law, and education. And as I understand it, they are all to be your husbands." Isabel was reeling. She was supposed to marry a whole group of them? Nobody had mentioned that. This was monstrous. That night, she mulled over the maid's words in her new bedroom. If she married them, wouldn't she just become their personal food supply? As a highly intelligent woman from the modern era, she wasn't about to let that happen. So under the cover of darkness, she grabbed her belongings and scaled the wall. She was just one leap away from freedom when her knight, Alan, caught her in the act, just as she'd feared. Back in her room, Isabel plopped onto the sofa in a huff. Why should humans be treated like food for vampires? Running away was the only logical choice. Seeing how resistant she was, Alan had no choice but to give her a history lesson. The Holy Blood clan had evolved from the original vampire race. They no longer feared the sun and didn't need fresh blood to survive. But their overwhelming power allowed them to conquer human lands and enslave the population. To have a chance to rebuild, humanity's leaders had agreed to a political marriage with the vampire king. In other words, Isabel was the key to peace between the two races. If she ran, the war would start all over again. Isabel didn't care about any of that. She just wanted to know why she was the one being sacrificed. Alan picked up a teacup, preparing for a long explanation. "Well, there are a few reasons. First, your family is a fallen noble house with massive debts, so your parents volunteered you to pay them off. Second, you're technically a princess, so you qualify. And finally, you have a reputation for being a spoiled, useless girl who's good at nothing but eating." Furious at being called worthless, Isabel snapped, "What kind of parents are they? Didn't it ever occur to them that I might get eaten?" Alan gave a sad smile. "Of course it did, but who cares? All they know is that after marrying you off, not only will their debts be cleared, but they'll get to live in endless luxury." The words hit Isabel like a ton of bricks. How could any parent sell their own daughter for money? She turned away, a new resolve hardening in her eyes. "I don't know what you all thought of the old me, but I'm not that useless girl anymore. In my life, I always accomplish my mission. I'm going to win them over." Today was the Dracula celebration, an event all 4 of the Empire's dukes would attend. Yet Isabel, their supposed fiancé, hadn't received an invitation. But she wasn't discouraged. "If the mountain won't come to me, I'll go to the mountain," she thought. She confidently made her way to the festival grounds. But the sight of so many breathtakingly beautiful vampires instantly crushed her self-esteem. Compared to them, she felt like an ugly duckling. But that was okay. She'd figure something out. She bravely walked up to the dukes to greet them. But before she could even finish her introduction, one of them cut her off with a cold, "Get lost." The brown-haired one didn't even glance at her, simply remarking in a disdainful tone, "You're in the way." His intimidating aura sent a shiver down her spine, and Isabel quickly scrambled aside with an apology. Just then, a blonde duke named Lynn smiled gently. "Ansir is always like that. Don't mind him," he said before walking away. His kind gesture made Isabel's heart flutter, and she began to dream of a happy life married to Lynn. Alan cruelly shattered her fantasy. "Don't even think about it. The only one you could possibly marry is Ansir. The Emperor has decreed that whichever duke earns the title of Dracula at this festival will become your husband. Ansir's combat skills are unmatched, so it's a given that he'll win." But Isabel was already lost in Lynn's kindness. He seemed so much more like husband material than Ansir, who was like some kind of emotionless war machine. Just then, a guard informed Isabel that the banquet was full. Alan whispered in her ear that they should probably leave, but she refused. "No, I'm not going to let them win." She took the food basket from Alan, pulled out the picnic blanket, and right in front of everyone, theatrically spread it out on the ground. There's no rule that says I can't sit here, right? The guard looked conflicted but had to agree. A moment later, Isabel was casually sipping afternoon tea, waiting for the Duke's competition to begin. Lynn and Ansier both shot her surprised looks. She just gave them a huge smile back. Don't mind me, I'm perfectly fine. Ansier had never been challenged like this before. He clenched his fists in anger. The other two dukes, Hughes and Catherine, openly mocked her. The tournament began. As expected, after just a few rounds, Ansier had defeated the other three dukes. Lynn and Hughes knew they were no match for him and gracefully conceded, but Catherine refused to back down. Sword in hand, she charged at Ansier, determined to fight to the bitter end. But Ansier was too fast, easily dodging her attack. In a desperate cry, Catherine yelled, "Do you really want to marry that useless princess? I'm trying to help you!" As if he understood something. Ansier threw his weapon to the side. Watching from her blanket, Isabel's heart sank. The winner would not only earn the title of Dracula, but also have to marry her. It seemed Ansier was willing to throw away his honor just to avoid being her husband. Catherine thought Ansier was letting her win and raised her sword again. But this time, Ansier dodged, followed by a swift, decisive slap that sent Catherine to the ground, defeated. The crowd erupted in cheers. Even Isabel was impressed by his effortless coolness. Wow, he's so cool. Maybe marrying him wouldn't be so bad after all. As Ansier walked past her, she put on another one of her silly grins and tried her introduction again. "I am Princess Isabel from the Byzantine Empire. It's a pleasure to meet you." Ansier gritted his teeth and forced out a single sentence. "You're celebrating too soon." He then stalked off, leaving a fuming Isabel to deal with the awkwardness. The defeated Catherine was radiating frustration, and Isabel's cheerful smile only irritated her more. Catherine shot her a dead-eyed look and delivered a threat. "You think this means you've secured your position as the Duke's wife? Dream on. Ansier won't let you off this easily, and neither will I." Isabel, still new to all this, didn't understand what was going on. The ever-angelic Lynn appeared again to explain. "Don't let her scare you. She's been in love with Ansier since they were kids, so this reaction is normal." Isabel wasn't scared by Catherine, but Lynn's words shocked her. "She's not a man, she's in love with Ansier?" Isabel's mind was reeling. No wonder Ansier and Catherine hated her so much. It wasn't just because of her nationality, but because of her gender. Lynn burst out laughing. "Catherine is a woman," he clarified. "She's the only female among the four dukes." Isabel's eyes widened. She recalled Catherine's confident posture, her handsome and striking features. And she was a woman? That meant Isabel's chances were even slimmer, right? "Don't worry," Lynn said confidently. "You are the Emperor's choice for the Dracula Duke's wife. No one would dare to do anything to you." That night, the soon-to-be Duchess was washing her own clothes. Alan complained bitterly about how the Blood Clan was clearly bullying her. She would never have been subjected to such treatment back in the human empire. But Isabel was taking it in stride. As long as they weren't trying to drink her blood, she could handle anything. Suddenly, a maid's sharp scream cut through the quiet. She stared at Isabel in shock. "What are you still doing here? Don't you know tonight is your engagement banquet? It starts in 10 minutes. Isabel's mind went blank. Why had no one told her again? She was so tired of these schemers. She dropped the clothes and took off at a run. She had to make it to this banquet. Even if they all conspired to exclude her, she would not back down. Inside the grand hall, Catherine looked stunning in a formal gown. She approached Ansier from behind. Hearing her footsteps, he turned, a puzzled look on his face. "What are you doing here?" Catherine smirked. "Who else would it be? Your weak little human fiancé?" Ansier turned away, but he could clearly picture Isabel's expressions. "She's not weak," he said slowly. "She knows exactly what she wants, and she's working hard to get it." Catherine struck a haughty pose. "And what does she want?" After a moment of thought, Ansier replied, "Status, honor, and me." Catherine scoffed. "She can't have any of them. I've already made arrangements. She won't be attending this banquet." On the night of the main couple's engagement, she waits until 10 minutes before the party to inform the bride, giving her no time to prepare. Even worse, Ansier seemed to approve of her methods. "While the approach is questionable, the result is quite satisfactory," he commented. He then announced to the guests that he and Catherine would share the first dance. As for the human princess, but he was cut off by Isabel's voice. She ran in, breathless, clutching her blood-stained skirt. "I'm sorry, I'm Isabel, I'm late." Seeing her arrive on time, the ever-angelic Lynn finally broke into a smile. Ansier, however, was not pleased. "What happened to your arrangements?" he demanded of Catherine. "Why is she here?" Catherine stammered out an excuse. The journey from Isabel's chambers to the ballroom should have taken at least 20 minutes. It was impossible for her to arrive so quickly. Then she noticed the bloody scratches on Isabel's ankles. Had she run through the rose garden outside the palace? It seemed she had underestimated her. Ancir was annoyed, but he had to follow the emperor's orders and dance with Isabel. Isabel felt a wave of relief. Thank goodness she'd taken a ballroom dancing class in college, or she'd be completely lost. But reality was never that simple. The searing pain from her cuts made it impossible to keep a pleasant expression, and Ancir noticed. Instead of feeling sorry for her, he suggested they switch to tap dancing for the next song. Tap dancing was something only commoners did. Normally, he would never do something so beneath his station. But to torment Isabel, he was willing to make an exception. The two of them plastered on stiff, professional smiles, putting on a show of friendliness for the crowd while trading veiled insults. As the dance became more energetic, Isabel's shoes flew off, and the scent of her blood filled the hall. For vampires, it was an irresistible perfume, and Ancir was no exception. Suddenly, Isabel looked incredibly appealing to him. He instinctively pulled her closer, his face nearing her human skin. Just as Isabel began to panic, a strong force pulled her away from behind. Lin quickly intervened, sweeping Isabel into his arms and putting several feet between them and Ancir. Staring at Ancir's dark expression, Isabel shivered. "Lin, I think you should put me down," she whispered. "Ancir doesn't look very happy." Lin was used to that expression, but to avoid causing a scene, he gently set her down. Just as he was about to take her to get her wounds treated, Ancir's deep, commanding voice stopped them. "Come here!" She chose to attend this ball, which means she doesn't have the right to leave in the middle of it. That's when the angelic Lin became surprisingly firm, determined to win Isabel the right to leave. "She does have the right. She does not." They argued back and forth, and when words weren't enough, they each grabbed one of Isabel's wrists. Isabel's head spun. Were these two really high-ranking dukes? From the sidelines, Catherine had seen enough. "Have you two forgotten your status, causing a scene like this in public?" Startled, they both let go at the same time, and Isabel, losing her balance, fell flat on her back. Lin knelt down to check on her, patting her head reassuringly. Such a sweetheart. Ancir, on the other hand, lived up to his cold-blooded reputation. Even with Isabel badly injured, he refused to let her get treatment, accusing her of disrespecting the blood clan. "You think you can just come and go as you please?" Isabel scrambled to her feet, filled with anger. She puffed out her chest. "I wasn't planning on leaving. I can keep going." Catherine had to step in. She allowed Isabel to go for treatment, leaving Ancir speechless and fuming. He turned away with a huff. Then Catherine blocked Lin's path. Since Isabel was Ancir's fiancé, it wouldn't be appropriate for him to go with her. She sent her own maid instead. As she did, Lin caught the sly smile hidden under her hat and couldn't help but worry. The one tending to her wounds was Catherine's own maid. She informed Isabel that there would be another banquet tomorrow, and the Emperor himself had requested her presence. She advised Isabel to rest well and not be late. What Isabel didn't realize was that the maid was a wolf in sheep's clothing. The next day, Isabel's feet were swollen like pork trotters. Catherine was going too far, scheming relentlessly to keep her from appearing. But Isabel was determined to go to this banquet. She fashioned a simple crutch and limped her way to the event. Catherine was stunned. She still came? Isabel walked right up to Catherine, who was sitting next to her fiancé. "You're in my seat," she said. Catherine, true to her nature, refused to move. Just then, Lin pointed to an empty seat next to him, suggesting Isabel just find another spot. Assuming any empty seat was fine, Isabel sat down to Lin's left, under the shocked stares of everyone present. Lin leaned in and whispered urgently, "Get up, quickly! That's not for you!" She didn't understand. Why not? She was the new Duchess. Before she could ask, the sharp edge of a sword grazed her cheek. What terrible mistake had she made now? Her own fiancé, Ancir, was holding a sword to her throat, calling her a disgrace to the blood clan and annulling their marriage right then and there. Through his endless tirade, she finally understood she had sat in the late queen's seat. Blood trickled down her cheek as Ancir's accusations continued. He advanced on her, ready to end her life. She squeezed her eyes shut. At the last possible second, the Emperor arrived. Ancir shoved her away, sending her crashing into a chair. The Emperor extended a hand to greet her, but Isabel was so terrified her soul had practically left her body. She didn't respond. "The Emperor is greeting you," Ancir hissed. Isabel snapped back to reality and responded to the Emperor in a bizarrely awkward manner. Ancir, who had just been verbally abusing her, suddenly announced they would be married immediately. No preparations needed, just follow the procedure. He didn't like Isabel, so he didn't see their marriage as a happy occasion. Isabel didn't dare object. She wanted a perfect wedding and a loving husband. But with things as they were, did she really have a choice? And so, Isabel and Ancir's absurd wedding took place in a rush. The ceremony was simple, but once the ruby wedding ring was on her finger, Isabel felt like everything had changed. From this moment on, they were husband and wife, which meant a wedding night. She cupped her blushing cheeks and let her imagination run wild, but reality came crashing down. Ansir gave her a disgusted look and ordered her to the graveyard for 7 days to repent for desecrating the queen's memory. She had to be the first bride in history to spend her wedding night in a cemetery. Deep in the night, Isabel was keeping watch in the spooky graveyard when she heard a noise that made the hairs on her neck stand up. "Who's there this late? A ghost?" She fumbled for a cross and started muttering prayers. But the figure that emerged was just her knight, Alan. He'd heard she got her wish and was married, so he came to congratulate her. But the smirk on his face looked more like mockery. Isabel felt even worse. Alan looked around the large cemetery, noting how few graves there were. It seemed the legends of vampires being immortal were true, but Isabel wasn't so sure. "The Vampire King is clearly very old. I didn't see his face, but his hands were all wrinkled. And the queen's grave is right here. How did she die?" Just then, they noticed a bloodstain on the tombstone. The queen had obviously been murdered. Alan lifted Isabel's chin, his words full of hidden meaning. "Dying a violent death isn't so strange. Even if the Holy Blood clan doesn't drink blood anymore, they're still vampires, aren't they? If you put a juicy steak in front of them, they might resist for a day, a year, maybe even 10 years. But forever? No." Isabel stared at him, wide-eyed. "Is there any way for me to survive this?" She had effortlessly married one of the 4 most powerful dukes in the empire, but being a duchess wasn't easy. She had to find a way to make the cold-hearted Ansir fall in love with her. After 7 days, her punishment was over. The first thing she did was learn to cook. After all, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. With a cleaver in one hand and a large fish in the other, Isabel got to work. Before long, a strange smell wafted through the kitchen, catching the attention of all the maids. Isabel emerged with her creation, a proud smile on her face. She probably thought she was a genius. But judging by Ansir's expression, her dish wasn't quite a success. In fact, he looked utterly shocked. Why was there seafood sticking out of a cake? Beside him, Isabel was practically dancing with excitement, completely oblivious to his reaction. Suddenly, Ansir yelled, "Guards! Seize this assassin and interrogate her." Isabel's face fell. Assassin? Where? And just like that, her brief freedom was over. She was being sent to the dungeons. In the Imperial dungeon, Isabel cried her eyes out. All she did was put her heart into making her first ever cake. How did that make her an assassin? Ansir held a trial for Isabel's poisoning attempt. Duke Hughes, who was in charge of the Empire's laws, presided as the judge. "Regarding Duchess Isabel's attempt to poison you, what are your thoughts?" he asked Ansir. "That's Princess Isabel," Ansir corrected him sharply. He pointed at the bizarre cake. "It's obvious. What more is there to say? Does this look like something anyone can eat? It must be poison, but no one's been brave enough to try it." The jury all agreed. Only Lin stood up, declaring that he wasn't afraid of poison and would taste it. He took a difficult bite of the cake, and the physiological reaction was immediate. He started retching violently. Fortunately, there were no other adverse effects. The cake wasn't poisoned, it was just revolting. Even with the evidence right in front of him, Ansir wouldn't back down. Even if it's not poisoned, her intentions were malicious. Even though Lin tried to help her, the fact remained that the cake was disgusting, and he had no real defense for her in court. Lin visited her in her cell and gently asked, "Why did you make a cake like that?" Isabel's mind raced as she brainstormed every possible excuse, finally landing on a romantic one. "The cake is called stargazing pie. Ansir is such a hard-working man, always busy. He never has time to stop and look at the stars. I just wanted to make something that would remind him to pause and appreciate the beautiful night sky." It was a ridiculous story, but somehow Lin bought it. He promised to pass her message along. That night, Ansir stood in front of a massive glass window, staring up at the starry sky, lost in thought. Lin stood beside him, still pleading Isabel's case. Whether her reason makes sense or not, she was only trying to please you. She meant no harm. The next morning, Isabel was free again, twirling under the blue sky and breathing in the fresh air. But her celebration was short-lived. Ansir wasn't letting her off the hook. He was sending her to a culinary school, and she wasn't allowed to return until she graduated. During her time there, her identity was to be kept a secret. Isabel was speechless. This wasn't a punishment, he just didn't want to see her. In her dessert class, Isabel's eyes darted around mischievously. "Just one little bite won't hurt, right?" But as soon as her hand reached out, it was slapped away. The woman was the head chef, Teresa. She looked fierce, and she was. One slap wasn't enough. She followed it up with a sharp knock on Isabel's head. And a warning: add 1,000 portions of dough according to the strict recipe, and no food until it was done. And so she worked on an empty stomach from sunrise to sunset. Rubbing her sore arms, Isabel walked out of the kitchen, muttering complaints. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Hunger had made her sense of smell incredibly sharp, and the scent of food hit her nostrils. She opened a door and found a whole roast chicken on a table. Without a second thought, she devoured it. After she'd cleaned the bones, she realized she shouldn't have done that and hid the plate. Just then, she noticed an equation on a blackboard. For someone who had earned a PhD, this kind of problem was child's play. As a way of thanking the chicken's owner, Isabel solved it. The next day, Hughes called an emergency meeting, in an uproar that a thief had broken into his room. The four dukes were furious. This wasn't just about a stolen chicken. It was a challenge to the entire palace's security. They deployed all of the palace guards to find the key piece of evidence, the plate. Isabel was racked with guilt and fear. They can't find it. She rushed to a bathroom, pulled the plate from under her dress, and placed it on an outer windowsill where they'd never look. Meanwhile, Hughes was still sulking over the missing chicken thief. Answer told him to give it up. The thief was probably long gone, but Hughes refused. He had to find this thief because they weren't just any thief. They could solve complex equations. They were a math god. After work, she dragged her exhausted body back to her room, only to find it in complete chaos. Even her bed had been soaked with water. Alan explained helplessly that Duke Answer himself had led the search party, and one of his men had accidentally spilled the water. Hearing this, Isabel's face darkened and she began to tremble. Just because he didn't care for her, his own men felt they could bully her? She had to get stronger. Alan told her to focus on getting out of the kitchen first. It was late, but Isabel stood by the window, deep in thought. How could she make food that vampires would actually like? Did she have to feed them? Blood? Yes, that was it. She had a great idea. The vampires would surely love it. The next day, she arrived at the kitchen early and cheerfully greeted the head chef, who had always been mean to her. She declared her new motivation to work hard and strive for excellence. Her sudden burst of energy left Teresa baffled, wondering what she was up to. 2 hours later, Isabel presented a simple-looking cake for Teresa to try. Teresa was internally dreading it, but she cut a tiny piece and put it in her mouth. The moment it touched her tongue, her taste buds were hit with an explosion of flavor she'd never experienced before. It was incredible. Teresa immediately decided to replace all the cakes for that day's banquet with Isabel's. That evening, the dukes all raved about the cake, all except for the proud Anseer, who hadn't touched his. Lin held a piece to his lips, urging him to try it. He took a bite but showed no reaction. Lin, thinking he disliked it, offered to eat it for him. Only then did Anseer stiffly agree to eat it himself. Lin turned to the head chef. "Who made this cake? They deserve a handsome reward. It was Bella," the chef replied. Hearing Isabel's alias, Lin happily declared she should be rewarded generously. Catherine and Anseer pretended not to know her. A little later, Catherine called the head chef outside and whispered something in her ear. Judging by Teresa's expression, it wasn't good news. The next day, Teresa announced that the Easter banquet would be entirely catered by Bella. Isabel was overjoyed. "Is it for 4 people again?" she asked with a smile. "No, 3,000. For a moment, Isabel felt like she couldn't breathe. 3,000 cakes? How much blood would that take? For Anseer, she was willing to do whatever it took to graduate. So she picked up a knife. No pain, no gain, especially when it comes to winning over your man. The banquet was in full swing, and even the Emperor was in attendance. The Emperor immediately detected the scent of human blood. While everyone was praising the cake, he shot up from his seat and rushed toward the kitchen, with a confused Anseer following close behind. By the time she had finished making all the cakes with her own blood, she had collapsed in the kitchen from blood loss. The head chef just watched coldly. Just as he'd feared, the Emperor pushed open the door to find Isabel lying on the floor. The head chef saw the Emperor and stammered, trying to find an excuse. The Emperor, furious, kicked her out of the way, scooped up Isabel, and headed out. He turned to Anseer and said grimly, "I'll give you some time. Think of a good explanation for me." Anseer had no idea what had happened, but he nodded respectfully. When Isabel awoke, she found herself in Anseer's bedroom. Alan handed her a cup of hot tea and offered his sincere congratulations. She was finally going to get her man. After the Emperor had rescued her, he had given Anseer a stern lecture. How could the wife of a duke be forced to bleed herself just to please others? If anything like this happened again, Anseer would be held responsible. So, to avoid the Emperor's wrath, Anseer had finally moved Isabel into his own room. They were going to be roommates. Isabel's cheeks flushed with excitement. Alan patted her head affectionately. "The Emperor himself has spoken. You two will definitely take the next step. A baby will be on the way before you know it." Tonight was their wedding night, but how exactly did that work? Isabel had already rehearsed it in her mind 800 times. First a kiss, then taking off clothes, then touching, and then she couldn't think any further. Suddenly, Ansir appeared in front of her. Seeing her shaking her head and muttering, he couldn't help but ask, "What are you thinking about?" Isabel's eyes went wide. "Why did you put your clothes back on?" Ansir gritted his teeth. "When did I ever take them off?" Isabel looked down, embarrassed. Ansir then spoke calmly. "Don't worry, I won't do anything to you tonight." She stammered, trying to hint, "Actually, you can. I'm your wife now, so you can do whatever you want." Suddenly, Ansir's pale face leaned in close, startling her. Isabel squeezed her eyes shut, puckered her lips, and braced herself. A moment later, nothing had happened. She cautiously opened one eye to see Ansir staring at her in exasperation. "You might be willing, but I'm not." It turned out he had no intention of sharing a bed with her. He was just afraid of angering the Emperor. He tossed a pillow onto the sofa. Isabel, taking the hint, offered to sleep on the sofa so he could have the bed. But Ansir turned back, annoyed. "Of course you're sleeping there. Did you really think I'd give you the bed? Don't even dream of it." Isabel's spirits plummeted. Was she just being delusional again? Then she realized she didn't have a blanket. Ansir explained that the Emperor had guards posted outside to make sure they didn't sleep in separate beds, so there was only one quilt. Isabel muttered, "But it'll be cold at night." Suddenly, a piece of clothing landed on top of her, covering her completely. "You can use this," Ansir said coldly. Isabel's cheeks grew warm. The coat smelled just like him, and it was one he only wore for important occasions. Lying down, she couldn't help but sneak a peek at his sleeping face. It was incredible that such a beautiful man was her husband. If only he liked her back. In the early hours of the morning, Ansir was jolted awake by a thunderous snoring. Annoyed, he got up and walked over to the source of the noise. Seeing Isabel sprawled out on the sofa, he had to wonder if she was really a princess with such an unladylike way of sleeping. Getting back to sleep was impossible now, so he decided to wake her up and have her join him. Isabel scratched her messy hair and said sleepily, "It's not even light out yet." Ansir's face was a mask of irritation. "You're in my room now, so you follow my schedule. Get up, we're going for a morning run." With that, he hauled her off the sofa. In the changing room, Ansir took off his shirt, revealing a perfectly sculpted 10-pack. It was true what they said. The more exceptional someone is, the harder they work. Behind him, Isabel shivered in the cold, completely against the idea of a morning run. "You don't have to run," Ansir told her. "But as my woman, you are not allowed to sleep in." Seeing Ansir's dedication reminded her of her own life back in the real world, how she used to be in the library at 4 a.m. She was no slacker, and she wouldn't let anyone think she was. So she changed her clothes and appeared in the courtyard. If Ansir was running 20 laps, she would run 20 laps. She wouldn't be beaten. But she was so tired. The kind of tired where you're about to pass out. Lin, who was watching from the sidelines, saw how pale she was, and rushed over to catch her as she stumbled. Ansir saw this and strode over, his voice sharp. "Let her go! She can finish on her own!" Seeing how little compassion Ansir had, Lin got angry, and the two started to argue. Isabel had to step in. "It's true I wanted to run, and Ansir didn't force me." That was enough to stop the argument. Ansir rested his chin on his hand and looked at Lin with amusement. "You always so concerned with my consort?" His words made both Lin and Isabel look at him in shock. It was the first time Ansir had ever acknowledged her as his consort. He then pulled Isabel away and said domineeringly, "This is my family business. I'll treat her however I want." But after the initial excitement, Isabel found life a bit boring. One day she was wandering aimlessly through the palace and found herself back at the room where she had stolen the roast chicken. She peeked inside and saw it was empty. As always, the blackboard was covered in math problems. Feeling guilty about the chicken, she decided to write out the solutions again. Just as she finished the last stroke, a man's voice called out, "Who's there?" Isabel fled in a panic. In her haste, one of her shoes fell off, but she didn't dare go back for it. At the doorway, Hughes looked at the fallen high-heeled shoe and made a vow. "I will find you." It was getting late. When Ansir saw that Isabel wasn't back yet, he told a maid, "Lock the doors at 9. If she's not back, she's not getting in." As the clock struck 9, Isabel was outside wailing, "It's only 1 minute past 9. Do you have to be so cruel?" Knowing Ansir wouldn't soften, she decided to take matters into her own hands. The wall wasn't too high. She took a leap and she would have landed gracefully. If not for one thing, Ansir was taking a bath in his massive, glass-walled room with a view of the stars. And at that moment, he saw her. Flustered, Isabel lost her footing and took a clumsy fall. Soon, she was invited inside. She frantically explained that she hadn't seen anything. Besides, we all have the same basic anatomy, so no harm done. Even if you have an extra mole somewhere, it doesn't make you any less beautiful. You're still the most handsome man I've ever seen. Ansir just watched her ramble on. His gaze fell to her dirty feet. "Where have you been?" he asked. Her excuse was that she got lost. Ansir knew she was lying. This was the same woman who had found a shortcut through the rose garden. He couldn't stand the thought of someone that dirty in his room, so he told her to go wash up. This woman was nothing but trouble. Letting her wander around was a disaster waiting to happen. It's better to keep her by my side, Ansir thought. Starting tomorrow, you don't have to go to the kitchen anymore. You'll stay with me. Isabel was overjoyed. Really? Where are you taking me? Ansir told her she would find out tomorrow. She lay down with a smile, snuggling into the blankets Ansir had just given her. He can't even bear to be apart from me during the day, she thought sweetly. The next day, Hughes showed everyone the shoe the woman had dropped, claiming it was a clue to finding his goddess. But it was a common style worn by thousands of women in the palace. How could he possibly find her? Ansir's face fell. Isabel had lost a shoe yesterday. Could she be the chicken thief? Hughes's face softened. The odds may be slim, but I will find her. Just then, Isabel appeared, dressed in a military uniform. Catherine immediately blew up. What right does a human princess have to wear a military uniform? Isabel quickly explained that Ansir had told her to wear it. Furious, Catherine stormed off to complain to the emperor. Ansir ignored her. Let her go. Then, remembering the shoe, he turned to Isabel. You won't have to wear shoes like that anymore. I'll get you new ones. Not only had Ansir allowed it, but he was also taking her with him to the military camp. Catherine complained to the emperor that the military camp was the foundation of the blood clan, and Isabel had no place there. But the emperor simply said, "It's fine. Ansir knows what he's doing." At the camp, Ansir worked in his office while Isabel relaxed under a large tree. She was bored and asked if she could set up a swing. He refused. This is a military camp. She put her hands on her hips. So what? I'm not bothering anyone. Ansir thought it was inappropriate, so in the end she didn't get her swing. Later, Catherine stormed up to Ansir's desk and slammed her hands down. Thinking, are you two that lovey-dovey now? Ansir denied having feelings for her and said he would explain later. Then he asked coldly, are you upset because she's at the camp, or are you just jealous? His question silenced her. Ansir spoke again. If you had agreed to marry me back then, I never would have had the chance to marry her. Isabel's mouth fell open in shock. So she was the one who had come between them. No wonder they hated her so much. A few moments later, Catherine came out of the room and saw Isabel hiding. I know you were listening, she said coldly. And if you didn't hear clearly, I'll tell you now. The four of us grew up together. We went to school together, we played together. Our bond is deep, no one can break it. Even if you are Ansir's wife, you will always be an outsider. Isabel tried to explain that she never wanted to come between them, but Catherine didn't give her a chance. Then why is it that after you showed up, Lin isn't acting like himself anymore? And Ansir isn't acting like himself? I don't care if it's intentional or not, but I want you to stay quietly at home. Don't come out here parading around and disturbing us. With that, she walked off. Her words were like daggers to Isabel's heart. She covered her face, heartbroken. So that's all she was to them, an unwelcome intruder. And here she was, foolishly thinking she could ever be a part of their world. At dinner, the different food on her plate seemed to be another reminder that she was an outsider. She kept her head down, picked up her plate, and walked away. Lin noticed something was wrong and asked Ansir, "Did you bully her again?" Catherine's voice was sharp with irritation. "If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all!" She snapped at Lin. Meanwhile, Isabel was in the garden, eating her bread with a heavy heart. Ansir probably doesn't want me bothering him. In that case, I'll just stay away from them. After she finished, she picked up her plate to take it to be washed. I'd better not cause them any more trouble or Ansir will just yell at me again. Just then, Ansir came up behind her. Am I that scary? He asked. She had been completely defeated by her rival's words. What she said made sense. Compared to the deep bond they had formed since childhood, she was just an outsider. It was impossible for her to ever fit in, and Ansir would never truly love her. Isabel was up early, standing silently by the door. Ansir, who was facing her, spoke calmly. What are you standing there for? Come here. Isabel obediently sat down beside him, not saying a word. Ansir noticed she had been avoiding him all day. Am I that scary? He asked. Isabel mumbled a soft, Ansir's expression immediately hardened. Frightened by his powerful aura, she waved her hands frantically. Not scary at all? Is there something you need? Or did I do something wrong again today? Ansir frowned, his expression serious. Do I only talk to you when you've done something wrong? Or when I need something? Seeing her panicked look, his tone softened. Relax. You haven't done anything wrong today. With that, he gently pulled the towel from her hair. I've thought about it carefully and I have been too harsh on you. From now on, I won't deliberately give you the cold shoulder anymore. Isabel still looked at him in disbelief. Ancir recalled their conversation at the military camp yesterday. When he had shown her a sword he'd taken from a human soldier, she hadn't looked sad. Instead, she had said that she was now part of the Blood Clan and had no connection to human society. It was those words that had made Ancir finally lower his guard. Now, he placed a large hand on her head and gently ruffled her hair. From now on, I'll consider you one of us. You can think of this place as your home. Let's work on this together, okay? For the first time since she'd arrived, Isabel felt a sense of belonging. With tears still welling in her eyes, she happily agreed. A single kiss from the young woman was enough to make the powerful Duke blush. And all it took to get her that excited was his agreement to let her host a tea party. Who knew the normally stoic Ancir could be so flustered by a little affection? He slammed a newspaper down, then covered his face in disbelief. Why do I see her everywhere I look? Am I possessed? At the crack of dawn, Isabel was already outside, picking flowers to prepare for her tea party. Just then, Ancir walked by. She popped her head out and greeted him cheerfully. But the sight of her only reminded him of their intimate moment yesterday. Even thinking about it was embarrassing. So Ancir put on a cool front and walked away without a word. When it was time for the tea party, Isabel waited expectantly for the noble ladies to arrive. But the day dragged on and not a single guest showed up. One of the maids felt sorry for Isabel, but another one said it was her own fault for stealing Catherine's fiancé. The two were so engrossed in their gossip that they didn't notice Ancir standing right behind them, having heard everything. Nonsense are you two talking about? Do you think you can just gossip about the Duchess? Go and accept your punishment. By now, night had fallen, and Isabel was sitting all alone in the dark. When she saw Ancir approaching, she looked up, her eyes full of apology. I'm sorry. I think I messed up again. But Ancir's voice was calm. It's not your fault, he said. Fitting into a new group is never easy, but at least you have me. He then pulled the cold food in front of him, cut a piece, and ate it. Aren't you going to eat with me? Isabel's heart swelled with warmth, and her bad mood vanished. She picked up a piece of broccoli to feed him. Ancir looked like he'd seen a ghost. But seeing how happy she was, he couldn't bring himself to refuse. He ate it and even managed to compliment. It tastes great! Hearing his praise, Isabel got even more excited. If you like it, I'll make it for you every day. What they didn't see were two figures watching them from the shadows. Catherine's eyes burned with rage. Isabel, I'm not going to tolerate you any longer. To make his wife happy, he forced himself to eat the green vegetable he hated most, only to spend the rest of the night throwing it all up. Lynn, however, saw right through him. I think you're in love. You've fallen for Isabel. Ancir's face turned red as he denied it. Absolutely not. She is the wife the Emperor gave me, so it's my duty to be nice to her. Besides, I've realized she's actually kind of cute. The words had barely left his mouth before he felt sick again. Even though he felt terrible, he still had to go on his monthly patrol. Back at the palace, Isabel got the news that Duke Ancir would be away on official business and wouldn't be back that night. She was also told that while he was gone, she was allowed to sleep in the bed. Hearing this, Isabel's worried expression instantly turned mischievous. As soon as the guard left, she dove onto the bed and rolled around ecstatically. It had been so long since she'd slept in a real bed. She hugged the pillow and took a deep breath. The scent of him sent her imagination into overdrive. Miles away, Ancir suddenly sneezed. Someone's talking about me, he muttered. Lynn, walking behind him, shook his head. Not necessarily. I think the princess is probably thinking about you. Those words were like a shot of adrenaline for Ancir. He insisted they set off for the Eastern District at 3 in the morning, wanting to finish early and get back home. She's waiting for me, he said, leaving no room for argument. Lynn was stunned. He never would have guessed that Ancir in love would be so clingy. That night, an unwelcome guest arrived at Isabel's palace. Catherine's headmaid. She ordered Isabel to come with her, and when Isabel refused, she used force to drag her away. Isabel screamed Ancir's name in her mind. At that same moment, Ancir felt a shiver of unease, a dark premonition. He didn't even stop to rest, riding through the night to get back to the palace. Holding up a sealed envelope, Catherine's face was grim. This is proof of Isabel's treason. She was the Duchess ostracized by everyone. It contained a letter detailing her dissatisfaction with the Empire and her sinister plans. The Vampire King is old and his reign is ending. Duke Ancir is arrogant, Duke Catherine is paranoid, Duke Lynn is unskilled in politics, and Duke Hughes ignores matters of state. The last line was the most damning. Win Ancir's heart, and you can conquer the Blood Clan. A wave of shock went through the room. After hearing it all, Isabel just laughed. She pointed at Hughes and said, As the Chief Justice, can you really condemn someone based on a few pieces of paper? But Catherine had come prepared. She had not only physical evidence but also a witness. And that witness was none other than Alan, the knight who had accompanied her from the human empire to the Blood Clan. How could this be? Alan walked up to her and bowed deeply. Princess, at this point I can no longer help you hide the truth. You personally gave me these letters and instructed me to deliver them to the human emperor. I didn't do anything, Isabel cried out in shock. But with Alan's testimony, her denials were useless. The crowd called for her to be punished, and Hughes slammed his gavel, declaring her guilty. Normally, the punishment would be death, but due to her special status, she was to be imprisoned until a final judgment was passed. Where is the Duchess? He asked a maid anxiously. The maid stammered, afraid to speak. Catherine stepped forward and handed him a letter. This is the verdict from the Imperial High Court regarding Isabel.
She's not coming back.
Ansir ignored it and strode towards the dungeons. I don't care what charges you've brought against my wife. Catherine was floored. When had the iron-willed, impartial Ansir become like this? She held out the evidence again. Not even if she committed treason? Ansir had been a soldier his whole life. The word treason was a sensitive one for him. He took the letter and read it, his eyes suddenly turning sharp and cold. Seeing his expression change, Catherine added fuel to the fire. Your consort is not as simple as she seems. Are you still planning to save her? Her rival visited her in the dungeon and presented her with 2 documents, a divorce decree and a confession. If she signed the confession, her marriage to Ansir would be dissolved. She would be stripped of her title, and her crimes would be pardoned. Isabel resisted, but what could she do? She was just a pawn, a sacrifice sent by her parents and the human empire. She had foolishly hoped she could rely on Ansir, but it had all been a fantasy. Filled with anger and grief, she took the papers and signed. When Ansir received the signed documents, his face was blank. He simply set them down without a word. The next time they met was in a church to return their wedding vows. Isabel decisively removed the ruby ring and shed her fine clothes. Ansir watched, his brow furrowed, saying nothing. As she walked past him, he reached out as if to touch her, but she was already gone. Isabel walked out of the church without a backward glance. For the first time, she felt an incredible sense of freedom. From now on, she could just be herself. Behind her, Ansir stood frozen, a mix of concern and longing on his face. At the banquet that night, everyone congratulated Ansir on finally getting rid of the human princess. Only he knew how hollow he felt. After a few half-hearted pleasantries, he made an excuse and left. By the light of the moon, he went to his ex-wife's new, humble home and watched through the window as she cleaned. He just stood there, watching from a distance. But it was enough to fuel the jealousy of Catherine, who had followed him. Catherine clenched her jaw and silently vowed, Isabel, I'm not done with you yet. Since the human empire refused to take her back, the emperor gave her 2 options. First, marry Duke Hughes. Second, enroll in the Holy Blood Clan's academy to learn, grow, and make a life for herself on her own terms. While Catherine assumed she would choose the safe option and marry Hughes, Ansir had a different prediction. Knowing his ex-wife's ambitious nature, he believed Isabel would choose the academy. Isabel chose the harsh path of the academy. The next day, a familiar face came to escort her to the academy. It was the mysterious man who had first greeted her at the border. To her surprise, he answered with great sincerity, I have wanted to meet you for a long time, but due to your status, I was not permitted to. His words brought a radiant smile to Isabel's face. Well, that's perfect. I'm not a duchess anymore, so we can be friends without any barriers. Just as she said this, a commanding voice startled her. You're already flirting left and right just after a divorce. It was Ansir. He told her not to worry. He was just there to give her a divorce present. He pulled out a dagger. We were husband and wife, after all. I don't want you to have too hard a time at school. With this dagger, you can not only defend yourself, but also... For some reason, he trailed off. Curious, Isabel asked what else it could be used for. Ansir hesitated for a moment before saying, Peel an apple if you're hungry. She politely refused his gift. Ansir looked like he'd been struck. Are you crazy? He yelled. Isabel just smiled. Since we're divorced, we have no connection anymore. Thank you for thinking of me, but I really don't need it. After refusing her ex's offer, she set off for the academy with the mysterious man. Along the way, Isabel enjoyed the scenery, while her sharp-witted companion sensed they were being followed. He immediately decided to leave the main road and take an undeveloped path through the wilderness. Isabel peeked out curiously. The man smiled. Are you scared? With you here, I'm not scared at all, she replied confidently. Her words seemed to jolt him. He looked both surprised and intrigued. What if I wanted to harm you? Isabel answered thoughtfully. If you wanted to hurt me, you could have done it when I first arrived. You wouldn't have waited until I had nothing left. Don't worry, he said. I won't harm you. But a moment later, after Isabel spritzed on some perfume he had given her, She started to feel dizzy and collapsed. Not wanting to frighten her, he had used the drugged perfume as a last resort. It turned out they were at the edge of a massive cliff, with assassins closing in from behind. He held her close and jumped off the cliff. The assassins above assumed they were dead and reported back to Catherine, who smiled with satisfaction. "Are you certain they're dead?" Her men assured her there was no chance of survival. In reality, they had landed safely in a tree. He jumped to the ground, woke Isabel, and casually explained, "The horse ate something bad, so we had to stop here to rest. Your Highness, I'll take you to register from here." Isabel was still disoriented as the man swept her up into a princess carry. Unfortunately, they still didn't make it in time for registration day. Just as the officials were turning her away, the mysterious man behind her shot them a menacing glare. The officials broke into a cold sweat and immediately bowed a full 90 degrees, welcoming Isabel. Only then did the man's expression return to its usual gentle state. Isabel was thrilled to be accepted. Perhaps it was the excitement of a new life or the thrill of being free, but she impulsively grabbed the man's hand and led him toward the registration office. Since the Academy didn't accept humans, the Emperor had created a fake identity for her as a pure-blooded vampire named Bella. After explaining this, the officials handed her the enrollment forms and a life or death waiver. It was clear that surviving in this academy would not be easy. She signed her name and received her school uniform and dorm key. On the way to the dorms, the mysterious man asked, "Are you scared?" Bella's face lit up as she flirtatiously replied, "Not when you're here." The man looked down, a hint of worry in his eyes. "But I can't always be with you." He handed her a small vial. "This potion will hide your human scent. Drink it once every 7 days. I'll bring you a new one on time." Having experienced betrayal, Bella found herself completely trusting the mysterious man who had helped her so much. Without a second's hesitation, she drank the potion. The man was pleased to have earned her trust and affectionately ruffled her hair. "Don't worry, you can trust me." When they reached the entrance to the girls' dormitory, he stopped. "I can't go inside. This is as far as I can take you." Realizing they were about to part, Bella felt a pang of disappointment. "When will I see you again?" she asked. "Soon," he replied calmly. It then occurred to Bella that this person had been taking care of her for so long, and she didn't even know his name. Blushing, she asked. The mysterious man smiled, placed a hand on his chest in a gentlemanly gesture, and bowed slightly. "My name is Eli." The dorm room was huge and beautiful, exactly what she'd always dreamed of. But there was a strange smell. When she pulled back the covers, she saw a large blood stain on the mattress. Had the previous occupant bled to death? This school was terrifying. Just then, she heard a vicious voice from outside. "Die! Die!" Looking through the window, she witnessed a brutal scene. A boy was tied to a tree, his face bruised and swollen, while a red-haired boy whipped him mercilessly. Bella immediately recognized it as a life-threatening case of school bullying. Without a second thought, she ran outside to help. The moment she yelled, "Stop!" someone hiding by the wall clamped a hand over her mouth. "Pure bloods can't stand up to the Holy Blood clan," a voice warned. But Bella wasn't one to stand by and watch someone suffer. She broke free, ran to the tree, and blocked the bully's path, trying to reason with him. The red-haired boy, guessing she was a new student, condescendingly explained the situation. The Holy Blood Academy was a training ground for the 4 great families. After graduation, students were expected to serve one of them. This boy, thinking he was too good for them, had refused to join any side. As a result, no one would protect him, and the only outcome for him was death. Bella was furious. He was being punished just for making his own choice? Her defiant nature kicked in, and she made the same choice. She wouldn't join any of the families either. The surrounding students started to circle her with malicious intent, but Bella stood her ground against the red-haired boy. Luckily, the 5 o'clock bell rang, signaling that dawn was approaching. Since vampires couldn't be in the sun, the crowd quickly dispersed, ending the standoff. Meanwhile, Catherine received news from the academy. All of this year's students had been enrolled. Isabel fell off a cliff, so how could she be alive and at the school? Even stranger, the identities of all the new students were being kept confidential. Catherine couldn't help but think of the Emperor. He's certainly protecting that human princess well. The placement test for the Holy Blood Academy was a 3rd-grade math exam. She had been worried she'd be completely lost. But the moment she saw the questions, she couldn't help but laugh out loud. Who knew such a serious exam would feature elementary school problems? The teacher, John, shot her a questioning look. Realizing her outburst, Bella quickly apologized. Just then, a blonde-haired man named Jack, the same official who had initially turned her away, called John outside. He furtively warned the teacher that Bella had powerful connections and that he shouldn't give her any trouble unless she did something major. But John was dismissive. "The Emperor has decreed that the 4 dukes have no influence here. Who could possibly be backing her?" Seeing that his warning wasn't being heeded, Jack grew more nervous and whispered that her backer wasn't one of the 4 dukes. It was then that John understood. She was backed by the Emperor himself. His expression immediately hardened. Can't even answer a single question? We'll see just how special this Bella really is. Meanwhile, Bella, having finished the test, was resting her chin on her hand, bored out of her mind. Soon she was fast asleep on her desk. She only woke up when the teacher came to collect the papers. After she left, John curiously looked at her exam. His eyes widened in absolute shock. On the day the results were posted, everyone crowded around the ranking board, except for Bella, who stood far away, uninterested. A boy walked up to her. "Aren't you curious to see your name?" he asked. Bella crossed her arms confidently. "I don't need to look. I already know my rank." When the boy asked what it was, she simply told him her name and had him look for himself. He went to the board, and sure enough, at the very top of the list was the name Bella. "Since you're so smart, you can choose any family you want," he said. "Have you decided which one?" Bella shook her head, saying she wouldn't choose any of them. The boy looked at her like she was crazy. "If you don't choose one, none of the teachers will protect you. You could fail every single class." But Bella was unfazed. "I'm confident," she said. "I'll be first in every subject." But right after she boasted about acing every subject, the combat test sent her plummeting to the bottom of the rankings. The boy with the bowl cut, Leah, warned her again that if she didn't choose a family, she'd end up just like the boy who was beaten. The pain from the combat test was even worse the next day, and Bella passed out on her blood-stained bed. A knock at the door woke her, and she had to grit her teeth against the pain to get up. When she opened it, she saw Eli's warm smile. He knew she had a combat test and had come to check on her. A sense of relief washed over her. She invited him in, complaining about how sore she was. Eli produced a bottle of medicine. It was exactly what she needed, so she started to take off her dress to apply it. The move made Eli quickly turn his head away, awkwardly reminding her that she didn't have to be so bold. But he soon saw she was wearing an underdress, much to his relief. He knelt down like a true gentleman and carefully applied the medicine to her arm. That moment, Bella couldn't help but think how happy she would be now if she had married someone as gentle as him. She was so lost in her fantasy that Eli got confused by her strange expression. He thought he had hurt her and quickly apologized. "No, it's my fault," Bella said, embarrassed. After he finished, Eli stood up. "I'll leave this medicine here for you. You need to take care of yourself even when I'm not around." Bella was confused. "Why wouldn't you be around?" Eli's expression turned sad. "I came today because I knew you'd be hurt after the combat test, but I can't possibly know your class schedule all the time." Bella didn't want him to go. She grabbed his arm. "Will you be staying at this school? Do you want me to?" he asked. Bella's smile was as bright as a spring flower. "Of course she did." The man smiled back. "Then I will." Under his tender care, Bella was finally able to rest and fell into a deep sleep. Eli watched her sleep, his hand hovering over her face. Just as he was about to touch her, he stopped himself, whispered a brief "goodbye," and left. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Hughes and Lynn were stunned by a math exam score. The first-place student had scored a full 50 points higher than the second. Hughes had written the test himself and never imagined someone could get a perfect score. Both dukes were desperate to know who this genius was, but the students' names were kept confidential. Lynn remarked that a true prodigy was about to emerge from the academy. Hughes agreed and decided to go to the school to meet this genius himself. He would recruit them, man or woman, before anyone else could. On the day of the choosing ceremony, Leah, the top-ranked student, chose to align with Unsir's family. Bella, however, stubbornly refused to choose any of them. But the teacher, John, told her that because of her low overall rank, she had to be assigned to a faction. "Since she's so smart, let's put her in the Ministry of Education." The Empire's education system was run by Hughes. Bella thought that working for him wouldn't be so bad and accepted the ministry's pin. But her defiance had already angered the other students in that faction. They shot her cold glares, whispered insults, and someone even pushed her down the stairs from behind. She tried to protect herself as she fell, but the vampires here were cruel. Seeing her on the ground, they simply walked over her, stepping on her as they passed. Suddenly, a commanding voice echoed through the hall. "Stop!" It was Duke Hughes. His dashing appearance sent the girls in the crowd into a frenzy. Bella froze when she saw him, debating whether to act like she knew him. She finally mustered the courage to greet him. But Hughes simply told everyone not to block the path and walked away with his entourage. He hadn't recognized her. The realization hit Bella hard. In that moment, she understood what it felt like to be completely alone in a crowd. Just then, a hand appeared in front of her. Bella looked up and broke into a radiant smile. "What are you doing here?" Eli knelt down and offered her his hand. "I'm sorry I'm late." The sight of him instantly lifted Bella's spirits. She tried to stand, but found she didn't have the strength. Seeing this, Eli gently scooped her into his arms and carried her back to her room. Once there, Bella washed away the dirt and grime in a warm bath, lingering a little longer than she should have. Eli, waiting outside, grew concerned when she didn't come out and called to her to make sure she was okay. "I'm fine," she called back, snapping out of her daze. Eli really is a kind person, she thought. Meanwhile, Hughes, still searching for the math prodigy, gave Leah, the top student, a special test to gauge his mathematical talent. Leah struggled with the problems and, despite his best efforts, ended up with a failing grade. Hughes realized his talents lay elsewhere. So who was the hidden genius at the academy? For a moment, an image of Isabel flashed in his mind. Could it be her? He quickly dismissed the thought. The human princess who left the palace is nothing now, just an ant for everyone to step on, utterly worthless. The next day, just before class, a group of students blocked Bella's path. The moment the bell rang, they scattered, and Bella knew they had done it on purpose. As expected, she was late. John angrily told her to get out and docked her 10 academic points. When Bella, confused, asked where she was supposed to go, he docked her another 20 for talking back. She had no choice but to leave. She had to stay up late, practicing while everyone else slept. If 100 tries weren't enough, she'd do it 1,000 times until she caught up. Hughes watched her repeated failures from the shadows, scoffing at her useless efforts. But in the next moment, just as Bella was about to release her arrow, he flicked a small stone from his hand, hitting her arm and correcting her aim. The arrow flew straight into the bullseye. Humiliated, Bella assumed he was bullying her again. But Eli, who had been hiding in the trees, emerged to explain. Hughes wasn't bullying her. He was teaching her. Her academy instructor had failed to correct her posture, so she had been practicing with the wrong form. Hughes was just fixing her mistake. The moment Bella saw Eli, her face lit up and she ran to him. He had been watching her for a while, impressed by her determination and hard work. He decided then and there to personally teach her archery from now on. After a month of training day and night, Bella had massive dark circles under her eyes. This was the 10th time she had yawned in class, and John had had enough. He docked her 10 points and told her to get out. That left her with only 60 points. Eli, overhearing her muttering, casually remarked that while John was strict, he wasn't a bad person. He was probably targeting her because he felt threatened by her perfect math score. Seeing Bella's confused look, Eli explained why math was so important. The better one was at math, the better they could calculate the movements of the stars. Anyone who passed the test to become an astrology priest had a chance to become the head priest for one of the great families, a position that held the fate of the Blood Clan in its hands. Bella finally understood Hughes's obsession with math. The Blood Clan hadn't had a head priest for many years. The last one was the Queen, but she had been dead for a long time. Hearing this, Bella's energy returned. She set a new goal for herself, to become the head priest of the Blood Clan as quickly as possible. After that, she stopped attending John's classes altogether, choosing instead to teach herself more advanced mathematics. Eli stayed by her side, quietly keeping her company. As Bella watched his handsome profile, she blushed, and a question popped into her head. He seemed to have so much free time to spend with her, and he was always there whenever she needed him. Eli answered her question seriously. "I'm not exactly free, but for you I have plenty of time." Before she could even say thank you, his next words made her jaw drop. "After all, you are the guest the Emperor asked me to take good care of." It was only then that she realized all of his kindness was just him following the Emperor's orders, not because he genuinely liked her. All those wonderful moments had just been her own wishful thinking. Disappointed, Bella told him she needed to study alone and sent him away. Eli returned home with a dark expression, refusing the cloak his servant offered him. When the servant tried to speak again, Eli's icy glare sent him scrambling backward. The day came for Bella's final results to be posted. Students crowded around the graduation board, and she could hear them talking about her perfect math score. The red-haired boy was intrigued by the name Bella. He wanted to see for himself who this person was who had taken the graduation exam as a first year and gotten a perfect score in math. In the faculty office, John adamantly refused to let a first-year student like Bella graduate. Eli, anticipating this, had come to mediate. He suggested they report the situation to the Ministry of Education and see what the dukes thought. Soon Lin, back at the palace, saw Bella's report card. Ansir noticed his shocked expression, and to avoid suspicion, Lin quickly brushed it off. He then went to the palace to ask for the Emperor's opinion, only to be told that the Emperor was away and his whereabouts were a secret. With no other choice, Lin decided to act on his own authority. On the way to the priest temple, the two head priest candidates, the red-haired boy and Bella, traded insults. As if dealing with him wasn't enough, she then ran into her ex-husband at the temple. Ansir froze when he saw her. Every time they met, Bella seemed to bring something new to the table. She could fall to rock bottom, then climb back up in a way no one could have predicted. making it impossible to know who she truly was. Ancir couldn't figure it out. Which one was the real her? Bella took a deep breath, walked up to her ex-husband, and gave a polite but emotionless curtsy. The gesture, however, seemed to infuriate him. "Do you have to be like this?" he demanded, reaching for her trembling form. Luckily, Lin stepped in just in time. "She is a new candidate for the temple priesthood," he said. "You can't treat her like that." Ancir looked like he'd been wrongly accused. He hadn't intended to hurt her, but with his track record, who would believe him? When Ancir learned his ex-wife was a candidate for the priesthood, he belittled her, saying she had little chance of becoming the head priest. Bella retorted with sarcasm, saying he was as arrogant as ever. Then she gave a perfunctory curtsy and walked away with her head held high. Lin first tried to calm down the fuming Ancir, then ran to Bella's side to cheer her up. The red-haired boy, clueless about their complicated history, saw this as an opportunity to curry favor. He started insulting Bella, calling her a rude, uncivilized brute. But instead of pleasing Ancir, his words only earned him a sharp glare. The boy immediately dropped to his knees and apologized. Ancir watched Lin and Bella walk away together, a surge of resentment welling up inside him. Why is Lin always flirting with everyone? And with his brother's ex-wife, of all people? Fueled by this anger, he strode forward and pushed the two of them apart. "What do you think you're doing?" Bella demanded. Ancir, full of righteous indignation, declared that as her ex-husband, he didn't want to see her getting close to other men, especially in public. "You're embarrassing me," he added. Bella was baffled. They were divorced, which meant they had no connection. He had no right to tell her what to do. With that, she took Lin's arm and declared, "I'll talk to whoever I want, be close to whoever I want, and you can't stop me even if I decide to marry someone else." Her outburst left Ancir speechless. He turned his anger on Lin. "I'm ordering you to stay away from Isabel." But for the first time, Lin wasn't the gentle, compliant one. He smiled and refused. "I like Isabel too," he said, pulling Bella closer. "So I can't, and I won't, let her go." Bella was still processing everything, but Lin was just getting started, listing all of Ancir's past transgressions. "When Isabel first came to the Blood Clan, you treated her like she was nothing because she had nothing. Now that she's proven herself, you want to act like her husband again? The world doesn't work that way." Bella was confused. She was the one who had been wronged, so why was Lin even more upset than she was? But what Lin said next was even more shocking. "Duke Ancir, I like Isabel. I am going to compete with you for her." Faced with his brother's challenge, Ancir just gave a contemptuous smile. He didn't think for a second that Lin could steal a woman he had already discarded. The air was thick with tension. Ancir held out a hand, telling Bella to come to him. Lin immediately followed with his own declaration of love, but the two dukes' confessions didn't move Bella at all. She was just offended that they were fighting over her without even asking for her opinion. In the end, she rejected both of them. Leaving the two handsome men behind, she went to the priest's temple. Looking at the majestic building, she felt her dream solidify. She would become the head priest. She would make sure that no one could ever treat her like a toy to be picked up and thrown away again. Bella's reaction impressed both dukes and became the hot gossip among the students. They all wondered why the fierce Ancir wasn't hostile towards Bella, and why Lin was so protective of her. Was she some secret noble? The red-haired boy, however, stroked his chin with a knowing look. He thought he had figured out who Bella was, and he was going to use that information to make even more people hate her. Meanwhile, Bella had found her way into the temple and was standing before a stone door decorated with 9 planets. Their arrangement seemed random, but she realized it was a series of complex mathematical equations. If she could solve them and open the door, becoming the head priest would be within her grasp. She spread out her materials and began to work day and night. A few days later, a furious Ancir confronted Lin, demanding to know where he had hidden Bella. But Lin didn't know either. Realizing something was wrong, they rushed to the place Bella cared about most, the temple. There, they found her in a state of feverish excitement, shouting, "I've solved it! I know the answer to the secret door." She didn't even spare them a glance as she walked towards the stone door. Ancir immediately grew alarmed. "You can't touch that! It's a taboo of the Blood Clan."